on screen?
Comment on screen.
Countdown.
Yes.
Okay, Facebook is setting up, and I believe we are live. Hola, 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 bienvenidos. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, that means hello, 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 and welcome in Spanish, my native language. My love of language for music came my love for English language came through the love of music, and today I have a very special guest, Nikki Stringfield, who considers herself a Dallas area native, even though she herself was not born in Dallas County. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Nikki? Where are you specifically from, and why do you always refer to yourself as a Dallas area native?
I am from the small town of Red Oak, Waxahachie area. So it's about 45 minutes south of Dallas. And when I lived there, I moved out here to Los Angeles about 10 years ago. And, when I lived there, I would always drive up to Dallas for concerts. Back in the day, it was a big deal in Red Oak to get like a Walmart. It's a small town. It's
Uh-huh.
growing, it's getting bigger. But for me to go to concerts, I always had to go to Dallas. And even when I would go see some shows, some people didn't know where Red Oak was, so it's a lot easier to say I'm from Dallas. Everybody knows where Dallas is. If
Okay,
I'm
and
in
I guess
Red Oak,
that when
Texas,
you fly from California, you also fly in from California to DFW, so you always have to drive through Dallas. But you
yep,
were saying that you moved 10 years ago. How old are you now?
I'm 32. I have to
32.
think about that because I'm always like I always think I'm still in my 20s. I'm like I'm 32. Just turned 30.
Well, that's a good thing when we don't worry too much about our age. We're just living the day, living the year, living the
Yeah.
moment. Well, the reason I'm asking is because you said you used to drive yourself to concerts to the Dallas area. So if you left the Dallas area by age 22, when did you begin going to concerts? Do you remember your first show in the Dallas area or other place?
Yeah, well, my very, very first concert was Backstreet Boys. I can't
Nice.
remember how old I was, but it was the Black and Blue tour. My mom and my Aunt Tracy took me. And then my
Okay.
first like rock concert, well, we would go to I think the big radio station at the time was The Edge, like 1021 The Edge, and they would always have like their annual, radio shows, and I think there was like a Dallas band called Bowling for Soup that was a
Yes.
rock band, and I used to love them, and they would be on those shows, so we would go see those, and they had like Michelle Branch, I think, was big at the time, and a couple, The Calling, I think. I remember going to a few of those, but like my first real awesome concert experience was I was obsessed with Evanescence, and I called in. I was probably about 13 or 14. I called in to ask when they were giving away tickets to the radio station, and they're like, "Oh, you won!" And I was so confused. I'm like, "What? Huh?" I was so confused, and so we went and we picked up the tickets, and my mom took me, and they were pit tickets, and I had never been in a pit
Wow.
before, and I was just like, "You was so close to her," and it was that I think was like one of the defining moments was like I want to be up there doing that. It was so inspiring and so awesome to be there and just seeing it so close. So
So
I've
that
been.
was the Evanescence concert where being in the pit really began to build this desire for you to not only go to enjoy live music but be part of the scene. But before we get to that, I want to go back. I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but let's go back to that Backstreet Boys show because I don't think it was your mom who wanted to go to the show. It must have been you who asked for it. So why don't you tell us about what kind of music were you listening back then? How did you enjoy music? What made Backstreet Boys stand out to the point that you wanted to go to a concert?
I remember I was obsessed with Backstreet Boys. I loved them. But my parents, I grew up listening to rock too, thanks to my parents. So, my dad played guitar. They both listened to 80s rock, AC/DC, Motley Crue, anything, Bon Jovi. So I grew up kind of listening to a little bit of everything. Like I'm not really a country fan, but my mom would listen to Shania Twain. So I love Shania Twain still to this day.
Hmm.
So I just kind of grew up in and around music, and I feel I just always loved. Me and my mom would just sing in the car, like Christmas carols, whatever it is. We turn off the radio and sing along to songs. So I loved singing and I loved music from a young age, and my mom and my aunt liked Backstreet Boys too. So that helped.
Okay.
And I mean, we were in the nosebleeds. You could
Yes.
really see, and at that point, they said I was so shy. I was a very shy kid, and I was like afraid to stand up and like get into it and everything. And no, that changed. That definitely changed with time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's the same experience for me. I remember my father taking me to a very first concert was a band from Spain. The name was Mecano. Probably nobody's familiar with them. But my father was at the time probably about 38. I was about 12, and he was dancing, and I was just stiff and wouldn't move. And it's one of my first memories. The way things go, the same happens to me now. Now I'm the dad going crazy at the show, and my 12 and 11-year-old kids are there sitting still. I take him to a lot of rock shows, and your story is really connecting with me because it's really interesting to see how both your parents were involved in fostering your love for music.
Mhm.
You mentioned that your dad himself played guitar. Did he play in a band? Do you remember the name of the band or some songs that he might have played?
Oh, yeah. Oh, those songs are ingrained into my head. Yes, he was in a band called Medicine Man, and they would
Okay,
play around Dallas and everything. Just yeah. So yeah, I heard those songs a million times. Yeah,
nice.
I love it.
He still play?
He still plays, but not in a band. So yeah, when we go home, he's got one of my guitars, and we've got the music room. So yeah, he still plays.
So the natural question for me is, was he the one that began teaching you how to play the guitar? Person that said, "Hey, Nikki, I'm not gonna buy you a big dollhouse. I want to buy a guitar for you." Is that what happened?
I wanted, I forget when he actually bought me my first guitar, but I started wanting to actually get serious about playing when I was 14. And he bought me a Nirvana tab book because I was obsessed with Nirvana. And he told me like how to read tabs. And then I kind of taught myself from there. So yeah,
Okay.
definitely, you know, helped me really get into it.
So let me ask you something. You said that you were born around 1989, if I'm not mistaken, or 1990?
90.
1990.
Yep.
Nirvana was big when you were 1 year old. By the
Mhm.
time you were going to Backstreet Boys, Nirvana hadn't even existed for 5 years. How did you discover Nirvana?
Oh, my parents too. I think my
Okay.
dad had an unplugged in New York City, and I don't remember what made me just become so obsessed with them. Like I was known as like Nirvana girl in high school. Like
Oh, wow.
everything I had to have everything Nirvana. My first tattoo was the little smiley face.
Uh huh.
I don't know, just something about his music and the way he sang and the emotion, and people would give me hell about what is he? You're a guitar player, and God, Nirvana's awful, like he can't play guitar, like, but do you not listen to his songwriting? And it's about the passion, and it's like, how can you be a guitar player and like Nirvana? I'm like, because I love the songs, the music, that his emotion, his
Yeah.
passion.
Well, on behalf of all those people, I must apologize to you because I'm not a big Nirvana fan either. When the album broke big, I was 16. I was a
Yeah,
huge Motley Crue fan, Megadeth, and all of a sudden this changed the whole spectrum. I
yeah,
put a Nirvana album there in the back just to be kind and nice to you because I've been hearing from other podcasts that you actually did listen to Nevermind a lot. It's an
yeah.
album that I've never liked too much, and I'm very surprised that you not only were into the van, but you decided to, take on the whole image and you dove deep into the music. Was there any particular song or some particular lyrics from listening that struck a chord with you that you remember?
God, I love all of them.
Hmm.
I can't really just pinpoint one
Now, you were
particular.
listening to the Unplugged album. So, does that mean that at one point when you began listening to it, did you decide to pick up an acoustic guitar and want to pick up that music and learn those songs from the Unplugged album in those versions?
I never really wanted to get into acoustic or play acoustic until recently. Actually, since the lockdowns, I decided to really start trying to sing and do acoustic stuff. Even though
Oh,
I loved the unplugged thing, but I was like, I still wanted to pick up a guitar and shred. I was still very much into that, but in the acoustic that I did have an acoustic at the time. I had an old Ovation, but it was so hard to play. Everybody thinks acoustic is an easy thing, and
hmm.
it can be if you're playing just E, G, C, but if you're actually wanting to, you can make it as difficult as you want it to be. So,
Okay, so when you went to that Evanescence show, you got home and you already had a guitar at home that you could begin shredding on, that you could begin practicing
uh-huh.
on?
I hadn't started playing at that point, but I was obsessed at that point. I was obsessed with rock, and that's kind of what helped drive getting
Hmm.
me really into rock and metal, and driving that obsession.
So you were more of a listener already, a very active, obsessed listener of music before
Hmm.
you began being obsessed with
Yeah.
practicing your guitar at home.
Hmm.
So you said you began taking it seriously at age 14.
Yeah.
Do you recall or do you ever reflect how that impacted your social life? Because at 14, and I've heard this from other shows, that you were never in a band in Red Oak. You were never in a band in the Dallas area.
Mm-mm.
So at age 14, if you're that into music and into an instrument, people usually make friends because they get into a band, they play it at a school show, and they maybe play a local concert, and that's how their circle of friends and their social life develops. Now, you were playing in your bedroom all the time.
Yeah.
You were all by yourself practicing hours and hours and thousands of hours that made you the expert that you are now. How do you reflect upon how that might have impacted your social life, your ability to interact with others when you were just so obsessed with practicing your guitar alone?
Hi, I was a nerd. I was a nerd in school. I was in all the honors classes. I kind of didn't really fit in anywhere because I had my rocker friends that would play guitar. They'd come over and play guitar. I was a tomboy. I was the goth tomboy
Okay.
girl. Um, and then I was also in all the honors classes. So it was kind of, I kind of lived a double life. And then I went to college and, everybody's like, you're so lucky. No, like you said, I literally in college, I would sit in my room and play all the time. I didn't go, I mean, I would go out like some, I'd go out on the weekends, but I really didn't make a whole lot of friends in college because I, outside, well, how I actually made most of my friends was I would go to concerts all over
Mm-hmm.
Texas. Like I would go to Dallas, and living in Austin, I didn't really have many shows, so I would go to San Antonio and Houston, and I would go to see like Papa Roach, Avenged Sevenfold, like 3 Days Grace, and a lot of the same people would be at these shows. And that's how I made some of my best friends that I still have today. Is I would see these same people at these shows. We'd become friends even though we lived far, far away, and we'd meet up at a show. And that's how I still made my friends through music, but not through joining bands at the time. So,
That's
yeah.
fascinating to me because my best friends I made in middle school and then throughout high school, but it was a different country, and they were the ones that would lend me their cassettes or their records, and later on CDs, and even the guys that I had a band with. And when I moved to Texas in the year 2002, I had a very difficult time developing friendships. Being from a different country, it's easy to assume that I would gravitate in and relate to people from my own country. But
Yeah.
we came under very different circumstances. And the first thing that really drew us apart was like, okay, what do we do for fun on a weekend? They wanted to go to a dance hall or a party. I never even danced until I was in my 30s. I wanted to go to a rock show. And what do I listen to in the car? It's rock music. And it was until a year ago, after the pandemic, that after 20 years of living in Dallas, I began making friends. Even this morning on my Facebook post, I posted about pictures with 21 different people that I've met and seen in the last 2 weeks. That's more than I met in the first 19 years of being in
Yeah.
Dallas, because I never developed friendships. So just like you, I developed friendships going to concerts. Now, you've mentioned that you are far away, so I assume that now you're in California. Those people are still in the Dallas area. How
Yeah.
does it go when you fly back? Because now you're just not Nikki the nerd. You're Nikki the international touring guitar player. So how does that? And I know that these are lifelong friends that knew you when you were a nerd, a goth in the honors classes and all that. But how does that impact the relationship?
It doesn't impact it at all. I see all of my friends when I go home. I have my maybe three close girlfriends that I see every time I'm home, and everybody's kind of. One of my best friends is in Pittsburgh, one of them is in Philly, one of them's in Houston, and whenever I'm in town outside of Dallas, outside of my close friends in Dallas, like, I go stay with them at their house when I'm in town, and they come to the shows, and I'm still, I think they kind of wonder how I did this because I've always been the quiet person, usually in the group. So I'm
Now,
still just me, just with a guitar, strangely on stage, a
I
little
see.
bit
Well,
louder than
now
I used to
I
be.
have to be honest. I think a lot of people wonder how you did this, because a lot of people that have found a career in music have usually been very dedicated to putting themselves out there through bands, to playing live shows, and your story is a little bit different. But
Hmm.
before we go into that part, I want to stay a little bit here, still in Red Oak, growing up. When you were in high school, you were already somewhat of an accomplished guitar player, even if only you and your family knew it.
Yeah.
What did your parents say? What did your dad, who had been an active guitar player, said about you? Did he ever say, "Hey, Nikki, you should try this," or "Nikki, don't let it distract you"? What was his advice at the time when you were still in high school?
Oh, he was. They were always super supportive, always. I had started, I guess, putting YouTube videos out. I guess when YouTube kind of started, that's kind of how I started putting myself out there because I didn't really have anybody to play with, and I remember, I knew I was going to go to college, and I just didn't know, for what, because I wanted to do music, but I'm like, realistically, like I didn't know theory. I still don't know theory. I'm
Hmm.
self-taught. I remember we went to University of Texas at Arlington to talk to the music teacher there to see about me going there and taking, and majoring in music. And the teacher basically told me, I guess they had a really good music program, that I would have no life and I'd be so behind because everybody knows theory. And so I would basically be struggling. And just basically, it was kind of because he's like, well, you can play, I can see that. But it was like, it was really, that was the first time that I felt kind of not defeated, but just somebody was, it was very not uplifting. Like, and I'm pretty sure if I had done that and put my mind to it, I could have done it, no problem. But at that point, I was like, no, like I don't want to not have a life. I still want to go to my shows. Like my whole life at that point revolved around concerts because I
Okay.
wasn't playing them yet or
What
going.
concerts did you go to when you were in college?
Um, I traveled a lot to see Papa Roach because they were one of my favorites in
So
all
you
of
followed them around to several places when they played
yeah.
in Texas? Did you go to several cities?
And Avenged Sevenfold. So just a couple of my favorite bands. Like, and that's where all of my friends would go to. So it would just be a big hangout
Let me
thing.
ask you something. Did you ever try to catch a tribute to Nirvana?
We actually played with a Nirvana tribute in somewhere in Washington, and I got up and played a song with them.
Oh, really? How did that feel?
It was awesome. It was so fun. I forget. I think did I do "Smells Like Teen Spirit"? Or no, I did "Heart Shaped Box." I think.
Okay. Well, Smells Like Teen Spirit is one of those songs that I remember because that one and Come As You Are songs that I ended up playing with my friends in the band because
Yeah.
everybody was wanting to play them. I didn't like them, but they were so easy, even
Yeah.
somebody like me who
So
only
easy.
practiced for 3 months.
Yeah.
Now, before we finally move on to college stage, what career do you want to pursue? But when your dad was supportive, was he being supportive as in like, Nikki, you could become a full-time musician, or Nikki, just do whatever you want and I'm fine with that?
Um. Well, I made sure to do the college thing to make
Was that
every.
an expectation they set on you? They said, Nikki, whatever you want to do, make sure you stay in college?
I don't. I can't really remember. I just knew that. I just, I was just good at school. So to me,
Hmm.
it was no question. And I had like a scholarship to UT. I was in the top 10% of my class. So it was kind of like a no brainer to me that college had to happen. Uh,
Hmm.
but that's kind of why I went to UT in Austin. It's because they had a radio, TV, and film program. So I
Okay.
still kind of got somewhat anything artistic really. I love film too. Like drawing was always my first passion. I'm That's what I'm really best at is drawing. And I didn't know what to do with that. So I mean, I don't think that they ever thought I would get to this level. I mean, they were always supportive and like, like I'd never been in a band. So I until I was 21 almost. Actually, my first show was on my 22nd birthday here in Hollywood.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, they were always supportive, but I don't think anybody. I think once I moved out here, it was for an internship, my last semester. So I think everybody thought I'd just come back home. You
I
know,
see.
I think I.
So when you went to UT, you mentioned in another interview that you had with a different person that you went to Arlington and you were pursuing drawing or graphic design or illustration, maybe. Was that something that you felt that you could have a career on while having guitar playing just as a hobby? Were you trying to decide that that would be what you would do for a living?
I knew I knew that I wanted to try to do music. I didn't really know what I would do. I guess once I got out of college. because I was doing radio, TV, and film, and minoring in business. So I didn't pursue graphic design or anything in drawing. Maybe I should have. Now I probably, thinking hindsight, I probably should have, since that's just what I was really good at. But I just knew in my heart, for some reason, that I wanted to go to California, Los Angeles, and that I wanted to do music.
So now that you are doing music, now that you have a solo record and you have already put out a solo EP, now that you're an active member of a band that puts original music out, now that you're about to release an acoustic album as well, have you considered to incorporate your drawings in the album art? I know that we don't make booklets for CDs or LPs anymore, but have you ever thought about just throwing in your creative drawing into that?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I mean, now, like, I'm about to start up a new drawing. When I put this recent one out, like, I was surprised at how many people wanted it, and so I just did a limited run of 100, and they were gone within a day, and people sent me pictures of it nicely framed on their wall. I'm
Hmm.
like, oh my god, people actually want and like my art. So yeah, for this album, we've talked about, oh, I could draw something up and do something, but I think for this album, I won't, but maybe on the next one for sure. Like, we've definitely talked about it, or having some of my drawings on shirts. People have talked about doing that. So yeah, I
Okay.
want to start incorporating it more for sure.
So let me ask you something. You said that your first concert was at age 22 in Hollywood.
Yeah.
This seems like a movie script. Small town girl, very good at school, goes out of town to California to pursue her dreams of working in the film or music industry and is playing a rock show at age 22 on her birthday. What do you make of that? Do you consider yourself lucky? Do you think that there is some sort of luck that interferes, or was there another kind of factor that played into this life course that has been very, very successful for you?
I think it was a combination of a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, and definitely luck. Like, I feel like the stars aligned, because I know how hard it is to get into these things. I was virtually a nobody. I mean, I had YouTube videos. Like I said, that's where I got my start. My internship, I had a music industry professor. That was like the only music class, and I was pretty much the only person there for music. Everybody else was there for film. And so he got me into the NAM show, which is where all the musicians go. And he basically told me, it's all about networking. You have to go every day and network. And me, I'm terrified. I know nobody. I'm going to this huge, massive convention by myself, and in Anaheim, and it's at the end of my, or no, it was at the beginning, right when I had moved here. So I really went every day, not knowing a single person. And I had hit up Schecter, who I'd been playing for since I was 14, my favorite guitar company, and they had seen some of my stuff on YouTube and everything. And they're like, come by the booth and say hi. And so I did, and they kind of took me in. I was by myself, and I hung there every day, and I just networked it. And even I think one of the days I didn't feel good, and I just went, and I just, me being such a quiet, shy person, that was a lot for me. And so
Yeah.
without that, I would not have met the people that I did. And that's how I got into my first band. And that's how I got, really an endorsement with Schecter. And that's how I ended up meeting the girls and the maidens. So it was total, I think, luck and a lot of hard work and dedication. Like,
Let's go a little bit to that part of hard work and dedication, because obviously, not anybody, but NAM was just, if I'm not mistaken, last week, and a lot of people go
yeah,
there. But almost anybody could take a plane and show up and be there. However, you already had the skills, and I'm very intrigued by the fact that you said that you were already posting videos on YouTube, and they had noticed. These had to be good videos, because there's a lot of people, even though it was about 15 years ago maybe, and there were not as many as today. They had to be good videos that they would stand out. When you talk about what do you remember about the hard work? And not necessarily in a hard as in boring, but the dedication, the consistency of spending 8 hours rehearsing, or how many hours do you spend rehearsing and putting up those videos, trying to put that across as I want to be good at this that I'm doing.
yeah. I mean, this was kind of when it was a new thing. Like, I don't remember back then, like, there wasn't a whole lot of girl guitarists on YouTube. There was only maybe a couple other ones, and I was, I had a horrible little camera, and YouTube was still new, and I think I started it because of Avenged Sevenfold had like a contest to like write your own guitar solo in one of their songs. So I did that, and then I think somebody, of course, said something mean. And so I'm like, well, I'm gonna keep doing this to prove myself. So of course I got used to the mean comments at an early age, which you've got to do. And so I would just put up covers of me playing, and some of them actually I sang on too. I remember, and then some of the bands started taking notice. Like I remember Papa Roach would share them, the singer of Godsmack would
Really?
comment. And a lot of them, I was like some Godsmack, some Avenged Sevenfold, Papa Roach, just my favorite stuff. And so yeah, I think it wasn't oversaturated like it is today. Everybody there, there's a ton of things on YouTube now. It wasn't. So I think maybe that's what kind of made me stand out back in the days. It just wasn't, there wasn't a whole lot of people on there yet.
So the timing might have helped because it was not saturated, but you were already doing a lot of very intentional marketing, so to speak, because you see a contest and decide to participate. And you know what I'm also noticing? There's a lot of self-confidence in you. There's a lot of sense of it doesn't matter if people say mean things. I'm gonna still keep doing what I'm doing. I'm guessing, and I love to talk about these things on the show because if you were asking me why is the reason I'm doing this is because I miss my father. Because I love music and talking about music, going to concerts makes me connect with people, but mostly with the man I miss the most. And I see a lot of the confidence that your father might have built in you by encouraging to grab the guitar and for somehow say whether you become a successful touring musician or just somebody recording in your bedroom, you're
Yeah.
fine. And
Yeah.
it seems to come across in the sense that you never needed to prove yourself to anybody but you first. And
Yeah.
if people didn't like it and if people would say mean things, you was like, doesn't matter. I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Is that the
Yeah.
case?
Yeah. It hurt. It hurt at first because, yeah, it'll tear you down if you let it. But, then you realize, what? People say awful things about Eddie Van Halen. People say awful things about anybody and
About
everybody. So it's like, of course, I guess if there aren't people saying horrible things about you, you're doing it wrong, I guess. Like
true.
then you're not out there. You put yourself out there to have praise and to have haters, I guess. So yeah, I mean, it took a little bit because especially when Schecter started putting me up, man, some of the comments at first, I was like, God, can I handle this? And then I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's
What were
fine.
the comments about? Because unfortunately, the rock genre and many throughout history have been dominated by males.
Yeah.
I would not ever say to what is it to be a male guitar player, but I'm sure you've gotten what it feels like to be a female guitar player. Were some of those mean comments directed at the fact that you're a woman?
Oh, yeah. I
Okay.
think one of the first photos Schecter put up was I was wearing like like a leather jacket, and my hair was black at the time, and I think I was wearing aviators, and then like I had some stomach showing, whatever. And then just people are just they wouldn't even go give me a chance to see if I
Yeah.
could play. They were just like,
Hmm.
just calling me awful, mean names and just saying, oh, she's so full of plastic surgery, which is so funny because I have nothing. Um, nothing, no plastic. I mean, just the, it's just so funny. It's like,
Yeah.
you didn't even go see if I could play. You didn't
Now,
even give me a chance.
now that
So,
you mentioned plastic surgery and cosmetics, I'm gonna ask that I'd ask, but I want to ask you, what does it mean like being a woman where the majority of women from age 12, and I say it because I have girls ages 12 and 11, begin to taking so much care of their nails, of their fingernails, coloring them and cutting them perfectly. Whereas when you're a guitar player, how does that impact that?
no nails. This this hand I let them grow out. I got a thumbnail. My nails have not looked good for I don't even try. I don't try.
Okay.
I'll go
So
get
that's
more,
just,
but
it
yeah.
just comes with the choice of
Yeah.
playing.
I know some girls look I'm like how do they have pretty nails and play? Like I don't have the time and the effort and the money to make my nails keep looking good. Like that's a nope.
And
Nope.
they're going to be gone by the end of the first song anyway, if
Exactly.
you make it with them.
Yeah. So
Okay, so now let's discuss a little bit about the move. What did your family say? Because it seems that you've always stayed in touch with them. You mentioned, and heard that you were a Dallas native when I went to see the Iron Maidens at the Tree Show earlier this
Yeah.
year, and they said I didn't know any of the names of the band members, and they said we have some family members in the audience for so and then I had to Google who it was. At the moment, I couldn't get it, but your parents even go to your shows. What
Uh,
did it feel like for them when you said, "I'm going to Hollywood. I'm going to Southern California to pursue this dream"? What was their reaction to that when you communicated that decision?
it was awful. It was awful.
Okay,
Well, I guess the stepping stone was moving to Austin, but
okay,
I would drive home every weekend. I drove home almost every weekend when I lived in Austin to be with my family because I'm very, very close with my family. So I was like, okay, well, now I'm going to LA at the end of, 3.5 years in Austin for a semester. And so, it was no definitive I'm going to stay here. I didn't even know that was going to be possible,
hmm,
but I did. And so it was very rough. Like they drove with me out here, you know, um, when I first moved here and I had to live in Burbank because of my internship, all the students had to live together. And so they drove me out here and it was the hardest thing, them leaving. It was awful because, like I said, I'm the only child. So,
oh,
yeah. And I'm very close. Like, my mom's like my best friend. So, yeah, we talk just every day. Like, I'm flying home next month to go spend a week out there. My cousin's actually in town right now. She's flying home today. So
okay.
yeah, we're all very close. We have a family Facebook Messenger group and that everybody talks on. So
Okay. So I guess that now when you fly into DFW, you don't necessarily want to catch any more shows in the Dallas area because you catch all of the shows that you want in
yeah,
California, right?
yeah. People are always like, "Oh, are you gonna go out to a show?" I'm like, "No. When I'm home, it's family time. When
Yeah,
I'm home,
absolutely.
like, I don't really leave my little town. Like, it's all about family when I'm home."
Cool.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about Schecter guitars. What was the factor that influenced you being 14 and getting a Schecter guitar? Because that's kind of like a big guitar for somebody whose previous guitar was just a toy guitar.
Yeah. My favorite bands played them,
Okay.
and I picked one up at Guitar Center, and I loved the way it played, and I loved the way it looked. It was like it wasn't as red as this one. It was more of like a burgundy red.
Do you
So,
still have it?
it's at my parents' house. Yeah.
Okay, so if anybody wants to see Nicky String's first guitar, it's gonna be in red oak.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nice,
I
nice.
took a picture with it one of the Christmases when I was in town, and I posted it a couple of years back, but I was like, this is my
Okay.
first.
Okay,
Yeah.
now let's talk a little bit about that self promotion because from the moment that you were still in Red Oak, you were doing YouTube videos, and I know that you are very active on social media.
Yeah.
I was a little bit, I'll be honest, scared because first I communicated with you for two reasons. Number one, you played in a tribute band, and this podcast is focused for people who are connected to the tribute scene. I love to talk and support the original stuff, but that's kind of like the starting point. And then you were from the Dallas area. So I said, I'm going to reach out. But honestly, I was thinking, I'm just going to do it for myself for feeling that at least I tried. But then you responded, and until you agreed, I began researching more and more. And all of a sudden, I go to your Facebook, and here's what I saw: I saw the number three, the number five, the number seven, followed by 1,000. 357,000 followers on Facebook. So, for somebody your age who started with YouTube and has grown through the age of social media, you're quite accomplished and successful at that. What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, I believe it has helped you to grow an
Oh,
audience, but what are your thoughts about the importance of social media nowadays to promote your career?
it's 1,000% necessary. You can't do it without it. Like I said, I've been on Facebook, not since it started. I remember getting it after high school, but I think I learned from an early age that you have to know how to market yourself, and really, it's all about it. And there are times when I'm just exhausted and I'm like, I can't handle it right now. I've got to take a little break. But you really can't take a break from social media. It's kind of, you just have to do it to market yourself. And I've like taking the business classes and really learning and growing with it. It's a necessary evil, I like to call it. But at the same time, it's helped me get to know people all around the world. And it's funny, I'll still have people comment on stuff saying, I was here since your Avenged Sevenfold videos on YouTube. I was here since the beginning, since you're playing in your bedroom. And it blows my mind that people have stuck around for, God, 15 years, about 15 years. They've
Hmm.
been following literally my little musical journey since I was sitting in my bedroom, playing covers. So
Yeah.
it's quite an
Well,
incredible thing.
like I said, as part of doing research for this conversation, I was able to listen to several podcast episodes with you and with other people. I'm definitely gonna be that's gonna say I've been there since the first time I saw you because you have an easygoing way about your personality. You're very humble. For those that are tuning in, they might have noticed that we restarted the live 30 minutes later because I had technical issues, and you were incredibly gracious. And at the same time that I'm saying all those positive things, I'm thinking she has 500,000 followers on all different social media platforms. So you're obviously the person with the highest reach, with the most successful career that I ever talked to. Let me ask you, how do you manage to stay humble, to stay down to earth in the midst of all the success that comes? Nikki, you're touring the world. You're playing in countries that most of us have only seen pictures of, and some people might not even know the names of the countries where you played. You play with bands that we dream of going to see a show, and you meet these people on a daily basis. How do you stay just like a regular person who can connect and say hello to others on social media and respond so favorably in personal interactions?
I'm I I'm still just the nerdy the nerdy kid I have always been. I'm still shy. I'm still the quiet one. I'm so, if you would have told me when I was 14 and picking up a guitar that I would have two signature model guitars, that I would have be touring in a band like with girls who were like my family, like we're all super close, we're like family, and that I'd be getting to do music, you know, all the time. Like I never would have believed you. Like I never traveled outside of, I think the first time I got on a plane when I was 21 to come to California. Like I never traveled outside of the country until I went. Colombia was the first place I went with the Maidens.
Colombia.
Yeah, that was the
Nice.
first.
I lived there for a few months.
Yeah, we played I think 3 or 4 shows in Colombia, and so it was always my dream to travel. That was one of my favorite things as well, and I still can't believe that I get to travel and see the world, and because I never got that. We on vacation we would just go to like Orange Beach, Alabama, like on the border of Florida. Like that's where we would go every year. So just getting to see, and I love history. I'm a huge history buff. So getting to like go to Germany, or actually just on the East Coast, getting to see getting to see Salem, and getting to see like, Philadelphia. It's I'm just so thankful. Like I never forget, and you know, I'm just from a small town, like, and I'm still the same dorky, nerdy person that I've always been. Except I
Well, I'm
just,
gonna say something dorky. Then you're still just a small town girl living in her lonely world who
yeah,
hasn't stopped believing.
yep. Oh
That's
yeah.
awesome.
I sing that one at the Hard Rock Cafe every time we do our acoustic show. We've been playing that one.
Let's talk about the fact that you mentioned you're a history buff. How do you reconcile going to these places that you probably read and look at pictures for so long since you were a nerd in high school with the fact that you probably have 30 minutes to look at them through the tour bus window? How does it
Yeah,
feel? Because at times it's not the dream of going everywhere, it's just
no,
work.
that's a bummer. That's usually what it is. You go to these places and you literally see an airport, you see a hotel, you see the venue in the van. Like you don't usually get to see anything, um, unless you really try to make the time. And when
Hmm.
we're in Europe, we're on a tour bus. So we wake up in the morning and we do have time to go walk around if something's within walking distance. And we would always do that. We would forego sleep to go and see stuff. Now, when we went to New Zealand, that was one of the places that was like my bucket list. I'm like, I love Lord of the Rings, I love The Hobbit. I was like, I'm not going all the way around the world to not see something in New Zealand. And two of the other girls, Linda and Kirsten, felt the same way, so we flew out early to see New Zealand. So we were, so fortunate for that. But other than that, unless it's a day off, we really don't get to see much.
And on your Instagram, I was able to see a couple of pictures with a koala and a kangaroo. Were those pictures taken on that same trip, maybe to Australia?
Yep, that was in Australia on our like one day off, of course,
Okay.
in Brisbane.
So
Yeah.
I guess that had to do something with talking to the promoters or the tour manager to be able to schedule flying in one day in advance and all of that, right?
Yeah, that one, we had flown in from New Zealand, and so we had like a day. The rest of the girls, no, no, they were already in New Zealand. So no. So Yeah, we had like a day off, like to, to adjust before the show started. I think the next day we played Brisbane, and our um, our tour manager there, Paulie, he was awesome, and he took us there. He's like, I take all my bands here when, so he's like, he got us in, and so without him we probably wouldn't have seen that. So,
Okay, so
yeah.
maybe we need to mention that anecdote to the tour promoters in Europe so that they can plan for an extra day off for you guys over there when
Yeah.
you have a chance to see more. What about India? Because I was listening to a podcast that you made with a guy from India that talked about you guys playing a huge festival there. Can you
Mhm.
tell us what you remember about that festival?
Oh my gosh, that was one of the craziest things of my life, I think. That barely happened.
Uh-huh.
So man, so it was just for that show that we went to India. And
Only one show in India.
yeah, it was right before Christmas. I remember our drummer Linda was not able to go because of a visa thing last second, so we were actually meeting up with a guy there in India to play drums, and we were using a sub guitar player as well.
Hmm.
So it was already an interesting experience. And so we rehearsed with them there in India, and I forget where we were, Kolkata, something like that. And
Calcutta, yeah.
yeah, and the festival was in a it was in a rural place out in the middle of nowhere. Like it's
Hmm.
called the Orange Festival of Adventure and something. And so it's like in the middle of nowhere. So we had to fly from Calcutta to a different place, and the weather was so bad. I think it was like a typhoon or something, and we couldn't get there. Like they grounded all the flights. And then they're like, "Well, how about you just jump on a helicopter?" We're like, "No, no. I'm usually very adventurous. No, I'm not getting on a helicopter in India when they're grounding planes. No." So the next day, they actually got us on a flight. I think we got on because of the government. Like the government got us on a flight or something. And so we
Okay.
did make it to the next place. And then we had to get in this little van. And I mean, it's a total culture shock. And we're driving on the dirt roads, and there's like cows in the roads, and then it's just, he said, total culture shock. And I've been to a lot of places, and we finally get to, you know, almost to the festival grounds, but they bring us to like this little shack thing, and there's no electricity, so you can't even get ready. Like, and it's
Wow.
cold. Like it's raining and it's cold. And so we finally almost get, so we just kind of throw our clothes on, whatever, and we can't get up the hill because it is raining so bad. And so they have guys trying to push our van up the hill. And
Wow.
it was something else, and it was pouring rain, and we finally got in a little tent, and we got up on the stage. It was an awesome stage. It was a great stage, and
Uh-huh.
there were people out with their umbrellas, and like, just so
Thousands of people, I imagine.
yeah, the crowd loved it. They had a great time, and it was it was an adventure. We barely got there in time to even walk on the stage.
So let me ask you something. Going back again to how you were in high school, a person committed to her studies, does it ever make you want to take a second trip to a lot of places that you barely just catch a glimpse to
Oh,
of?
yeah. Yeah.
Is
A
that
lot.
something that you're planning for at one point? Is what are the like top five countries that you would like to go back again? Probably Australia and New Zealand you got enough of, but
Yeah.
other countries that you're like, oh, I definitely need to come back here with
Uh,
more time.
no, I didn't really get to see Australia at all. So that
Okay.
would be a definite, because we had that one day off in Brisbane, and we saw the Sydney Opera House after the show, and they turned the lights off right when we got there, and we're like, oh, don't get to see anything. And we saw Bon Scott's grave because our tour manager guy was awesome, and he,
He
went
knew you
out.
loved ACDC.
Yeah, yeah, I had to get that for my dad. He's a
Hmm.
huge AC/DC fan, so I would definitely say Australia. I would love to go back to New Zealand and just have more time for sure. Um, we've been to Germany so much, and it's one of my favorite places. But luckily, we have got to see a lot of Germany.
Okay.
Um, gosh, I guess there's a lot of places in Mexico I would love to go and see the pyramids. Every time we're there, I've never got to see any of
You've
the
never seen the pyramids of, you're talking about Teotihuacan, the ones in the
yeah,
center of Mexico, right?
yeah,
Because my country, I'm from Guatemala, and they learned that the Iron Maidens played there, but I believe it was before your time. They
yeah,
played in
uh-huh,
2007.
yeah.
And so you haven't been there. Let me ask you something. You also mentioned something about culture shock. What does it mean to you when you are a person living in Hollywood, California, the land of dreams and lights and movie stars, and who gets to make a living traveling to these places and experiencing things like you experience in India, where people literally have to push a band, and at the same time you go playing a stage in front of thousands of people, and then you are safely going back home. What are some of the key learnings that you've brought into your own life from all this culture shock that you experienced? I'll tell you what, I've been living in Texas for 20 years, and there's not a week that goes by without me experiencing some culture shock for
Mhm.
what it is. I was raised for 27 years in a completely different place with a completely different language. How about you when you get to experience these things with so much frequency and so intensely? Because once you get to a place, you're in the center of all the action. Are there some reflections that you brought up for your life of things that maybe make you even more grateful for or make you appreciate things in a different way?
Mhm.
What are some learnings from all these cultural shock experiences you've had?
Oh, it makes me so thankful for everything that we have here. Just even running hot water.
Hmm.
Something you don't think about. We played in like Bolivia, and it was cold there, and there was no hot water, and so we'd just be and everybody got sick. It was no sleep. There was no sleep, and we're in freezing cold and then cold showers. I mean, it's just something as simple as that, as basic hot hot showers, hot running hot water, clean sanitary food. I got horrible um I was so sick after I came home from India. Like I was puking my guts out on Christmas Day from food poisoning from there. Like just cuz and
Hmm.
I tried to be safe. I didn't eat, I brought Cliff Bars. I was just trying to cuz some of the food you saw all the food when we were driving, it was on the ground in the mud basically. And
Yeah.
people are walking around barefoot, and then there's dogs eating the meat on the ground, and then that's probably what you're eating at the place next door. So
Hmm.
I got so sick from that. And so it's just things like that that you don't even really think about, that we take for granted, that we live in a
Until you
different
see
place.
them.
Yeah.
Now, what about you mentioned that the Indian government had to intervene, and I'm sure it was some officer that was able to put things together. In the U.S., there's a lot of comments about how government plays a role or doesn't play a role in things, but let's not talk about American politics. Why don't you talk about the experiences where you compare, for example, India to the way things go in Australia and New Zealand to your experiences in South America? You specifically mentioned that in Europe you get to use tour buses, and in
Mhm.
other places you've mentioned vans. What are some of the biggest things that you can contrast from going to these different places? What is the biggest difference for you as a guitar playing a rock band that you get to experience for that day that you're there?
Well, Europe, because we're out there for so long, like the travel, we've done vans in Europe, but you don't get to travel as far overnight. That's why in Europe we do a tour bus so that we can get to these destinations. In Australia, you can't just drive. Like you have to take a flight in between every city, so you're flying every day. Um, so I guess it just totally depends. I will say, and we've done a lot. We've done Japan, we've done Singapore. I will say just India was the biggest, just I guess, culture shock. I'll say it again, just we were trying to order food, and they wouldn't listen to the women. Like our tour manager had to order for us.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
and I was sitting at the bar with him at the airport, and I'm like, "You're gonna have to order for me," because they had separate security lines for women and men at the
Uh
airport.
huh.
Like and they got in there, and they all had rifles and like these crazy guns at the airports, like going through security, and then they make you go in this private booth. It was just kind of, you know, just like I said, I've kind of been all over the place. So that one was just, it was very
You
strange.
know, you in all the bands that you mentioned at first, you didn't mention the band Korn, but the band Korn playing my country about 7 years ago, and the reason it comes to mind is because Fieldy, the bass player, all
Yeah.
the pictures. Um, I know my country, and this is the way it goes, so it doesn't shock me. Almost every time they're going, and there's literally like six people armed with a like AK-47s, I believe they are,
Wow.
and Fieldy, the bass player, is looking all excited to be surrounded by all these machine guns.
Oh my
What's
God.
interesting to me is that you would never imagine that happening here. When you think of security and an event here, it's
Yeah.
all very discreet, very professional, and microphones, and I'm sure concealed weapons. But I was wondering if you'd ever experienced that, to being seeing armed people surrounding you
Oh,
as part of the protocol.
I know in Dubai, we played a show in Dubai, and my drummer and I were out. No, like the venue was actually inside the hotel, so we never like left the hotel. But her and I went to go get like a glass of wine or something, and we noticed this big, huge guy just following us. And then we realized, oh well, I guess he's our security. Like he's like walking around with us, but just far enough to stay back. Yeah, I've seen some stuff like that in Mexico too. Like we flew in and, or was it Mexico? Might have been South, I can't remember because we've done all these South American tours and then I forget which country turns
Yeah.
into which. But yeah, we've had like biker gangs come in
Hmm.
and like drive ahead of us
Wow.
in the van and stuff. So
And it kind of concerns you for a moment.
we're just kind of like, what's going on? Well, okay.
Nikki, let me ask you something. What goes through your mind as they're laying out the plans for a tour? Is there always an ability for the band members to have input, like say, hey, we haven't played this country. Is there a way that you can book us a gig there? Or is there a way that we can play this city? How does that play? Because you guys are literally touring the world. You are at a level that most of us are not familiar with. How does it go when it comes to booking? Does the band have any input? Can you talk to your manager about getting you specific shows?
It's basically all up to our booking agents. Like
Okay.
it's pretty much them. They book the shows. They come to us, and of course we have to say yes or no. But they pretty much do it. I mean, we make it known. Like if we want to, like, we like to play some local shows sometimes. But basically, you know, they do it, and they bring everything to us.
I see. So, how about? I remember that you mentioned that you changed booking agents a few years ago, and that changed a lot of the dynamics for the band. And I'm thinking about, for people that are in tribute bands locally, how important it is to have a booking agent, because no matter how good the band is, it could be just the best kept secret if you don't have an active promoter or a booking agent. How were you able to find this booking agent, and what insight do you have for people that may not be able to hire a professional booking agent or a booking agent from California to do all this business for them, as far as how to promote their bands?
Well, we've kind of known these guys for a long time. They're called Big Time Entertainment, and we were actually their first tribute band. So I think that was kind of a strange thing for them too. But they decided to
Hmm.
take a chance on us, and since then, we've done all these other tours like Europe and well, we were doing Europe before them, but more extensively Europe and Australia, and they've really opened up our markets. And we play with a bunch of their other bands, like Queensryche and stuff. So we've been doing more festivals, but also it comes down to like social media too. We the Maidens have a huge social media reach. We played
Hmm.
on AXS TV's world's greatest tribute bands. So I think a lot of it also has like location to do with it. Being out here in Los Angeles, like we used to play LA a lot. Um, but yeah, definitely having a great booking agency has helped. And
Now, let me ask you something, because the story of how you joined the Maidens has been actively covering a lot of episodes, and for people who are fans of you or the Arrow Maidens, they can easily find that information. I know that you joined them because of your connection with band members that were in the band that you were at the time, and then that you were asked to sub for some shows.
yeah,
It seems that several times in your life, I've heard the definition. I mean, several times in your life, this luck factor has played a role, but I've heard the definition that luck is when opportunity meets preparation. You
yeah.
have had opportunities, but you were always prepared for them. How prepared were you when they said you want to sub for an Iron Maiden tribute band? How many Iron Maiden songs knew by then? How much have you rehearsed them? How much have you do you have to work? How nervous were you? Like, oh, can I do this in the next couple of days? Tell me about that moment when they made that invitation to you.
Oh, that was the most hectic part of my life. I will say that right there. But I was not saying no to anything. Like I grew up listening to Maiden. Like if you could see any of my old videos, I had a Maiden's Killers poster on my wall, behind me. So I grew up loving Maiden, and I think I probably knew some of Wasted Years and 2 Minutes to Midnight and stuff like that. So at the time, I was learning my band's original material because it was a new band. So I was learning that. I was finishing college. It was my last semester. I was working, I was interning at Warner Brothers Music. I was working at Schecter as a receptionist. And so I was trying to do all of these things, and then they came in and they're like, "Can you learn, I forget how many songs it was, 12 or 13 or maybe 14 songs and do this show?" And my band's show was on my birthday, so April 14th, and I believe the Maidens show was literally the next Saturday. And so all within, so literally I'm literally finishing college. I have a job, I have an internship, and now I'm taking on all of this material, and I've never never played a live show in my life. So it was oh my gosh, it was crazy to say the least. But I was determined. I was so determined. I just sat and I learned all these songs. And a lot of the Maiden songs, they kind of have the same things going on. I was just like, please don't play the wrong solo in a song because they start sounding the same. They just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So I that was the craziest part of my life. And I
So
told
you,
myself, I could do that, I could do anything.
yeah, absolutely. So were you ever familiar with the tribute scene before you got that invitation? Familiar to the point where you had considered starting a tribute band?
No, not really. I've always wanted to do original music, but I loved Maiden, so I was like, sure, seems
Hmm.
I never imagined that I would have ended up part or full time and doing this 10 years later, which I'm so
Okay,
happy that I am because I luckily I don't know if I could do something if I didn't love the music. And I do
absolutely.
love Maiden, and it's fun to play. So,
Do you still hope to meet the band members sometimes? Is that something that matters a lot to you, having that opportunity? Because a lot of people who are familiar with the Iron Maidens are familiar with the fact that they have gone to your shows in Mexico City,
yeah,
that they have sent compliments. I believe Nico McBrien is a fan. What are
yeah.
your hopes and expectations when it comes to the real, to the persons, to the real people, Iron Maiden band? Is there any desire to meet them?
Oh,
How does
yeah.
it go in your mind?
I would love to meet them, of course. Like they're such a huge part of my life. I would absolutely love to meet them. Hopefully one day. I know they're
Okay.
playing here in September, I believe. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to go to the show, but yeah, I would love to.
Well, how many times have you seen them live? I believe your first time seeing them was the Book of Souls tour.
Yeah, I've only seen them. Is it twice? Have I only seen them twice? I've only seen them twice. Yeah, I've
Okay.
saw them on the Book of Souls in Vegas. We played a couple of their fan club pre-parties in Vegas, and then I saw them here, I believe in 2019 on the Legacy of the Beast tour.
Did you see the opening bands for any of those tours?
I believe we did. I believe I saw the opening band on both tours. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember their names?
Oh, Raven's Age? It was Steve
Okay.
Harris's
Was
son.
Ghost? Oh, that's isn't that British Lion?
No, no, that's Steve Harris's
Oh
band.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. What
Um,
about Ghost? Was
Yeah,
Ghost opening one of their shows?
I wish. I would love to see Ghost. No,
Okay.
I didn't see him on
Oh,
that.
are you a fan of Ghost?
Yeah, I like them.
Okay, there's even a tribute band in Dallas that tributes the music of Ghost. So, talking about tributes for a moment, are there any tribute shows that you go to? Is there anything in the tribute scene that you guys study as a band, examine stories, or even how to market? Because obviously, you guys have a very unique angle that has made you very successful. Not many. I don't even know of two tribute bands that could talk about touring internationally. What is your mindset about the touring scene? Do you see yourselves as somewhat a very unique entity? You see yourselves as part of these tribute scenes, like probably leading the charge. How does the band talk about this concept of the tribute scene?
I don't know if we really talk about it that much, honestly. I mean, it's like I said, Linda, our drummer, kind of started this thing, over 20 years ago, and I never really knew of the tribute scene that much. I think I saw a Guns N' Roses tribute band in Dallas when I lived there, and that was
Okay.
kind of new to me. I was like, "Oh, what is this?" This is I don't know if it was just them or if I was seeing Steel Panther that night. It might have just been them. Um, but we have so many friends here. I mean, it's a huge tribute scene in Los Angeles. Like we have our friends in Damage Inc. There's like some awesome Godsmack tribute bands. I mean, there's like a tribute band for everything.
Hmm.
I saw just the other night Nerd Halen,
Yeah.
House Sparks, his band, and they were so fun. And it's like when you create something that's like got a little gimmick to it, like they do, to where they dress up as nerds on stage and they kind of get very nerdy, but they sound awesome. I think that's when you really kind of set yourself apart, when you have
What
something.
about this name for a band? And this is recorded, and for the record, I'm giving you full rights to it. Nerdvana, Nerdvana, and you lead that band. It's going to be
Yeah.
a tribute to Nirvana by the nerdy guitar player Nikki Stringfield.
Oh
Nikki,
yeah.
we're approaching 1 hour, and I would love to keep on talking to you, but I want to respect your time. I want to ask you just a couple of questions to end this. How did you experience the process of being a full-time touring musician, where, from what I understand, the majority of your income, your livelihood comes from touring? You put out original music, but
Mhm.
streaming, even the people that stream songs a billion times a year, they know that that is not enough to make a living. They make their living from touring. How do you experience what the world experienced over the last couple of years with the pandemic? What was the biggest learning? As far as, for me, the biggest learning was the need for human connection, because the
Yeah.
first thing I did was able to be going out was go to buy a dozen tickets to tribute shows, because they were the only ones that are available, and they changed
Yeah.
my life. I was desperate for live music above anything else.
Yes.
But what about you? What was your experience? I know that you were the last ones to the plane from a. It's not the plane, the word, but the right word doesn't come to mind. To step out of a cruise that could have been stuck in sea. So you got that part right. You were able to not be stuck in sea. But then you were during lockdown, when your income relies on touring. How do you experience that? But also the experiences that are not necessarily financial. What are your learnings from the pandemic?
Well, that was a tough time, for sure. I mean, like you said, basic human interaction. You know, we we miss that so much, and we just we love being on stage and getting to play and seeing people get happiness from that. Just being able to hug people again at shows. You know, we have friends. We've made friends all over the country at these shows. You know, you get so used to being able to go out and just, hey, what's up? You know, hug each other. Um, but it really made us switch gears. Like Patrick and I, you know, my fiance who I do music with, that's when we started doing acoustic stuff and focusing on merch, because you know we make, it's crazy, people still buy CDs. Believe it
Yeah,
or
I am one of those.
yeah, me too. I love physical media, and so we really started trying to do merch, and we're like, well, people don't have money to be buying merch, but you know what? People were so ready for music, and also like us, like dying to play music. We're starving for live music, and people are doing that too. So we started doing like, you know, live streams, acoustic live streams and videos, and people just really loved it because they couldn't go out and see these live shows. So it really started like being a thing to where people were collaborating more and doing things like this to you know fill that void in, you know, the
True.
best way possible, I guess.
I remember before the pandemic, doing a Zoom meeting was like kind of like the cheap way out of having to go and
Yeah,
meet them in person. And
yeah,
now it's like the most normal and convenient thing. Let me ask you something now that you mentioned your fiance. And you mentioned the word fiance, so I assume that this is by now a much more formal relationship. In the past, we've learned that it was your.
yeah.
Does it mean to work with him, because he's also your producer and records based on your records? How complicated it is to manage a relationship like that, and specifically, how important was the fact that he was a musician, and a music fan and a music lover, as far as being able to get along and work collaboratively together? Because now it's not only your personal life intertwined, but also your professional life, and that leads for both creative tension and personal opportunities for having great successes, but also great tension. Why do you talk to us about what it means to have that? And here's something I want to say. When I've interviewed musicians in the tribute scene, they are people who play tribute shows occasionally. They don't make a living out of this. So they have a full-time job and a family. And a lot of them have mentioned that it adds stress, because, on top of their full-time job, then they spend a couple of nights rehearsing to go
Mhm.
play a show that doesn't even pay the bills.
Yeah.
So there's some stress that comes from dedicating their lives to this passion of music. I myself find that stress at times when I go to 3 or 4 different shows over the weekend, when I have 4 young children at
Yeah.
home and I leave somebody else taking care of them. So how does that play in your professional and personal life now that you're engaged?
Well, the funny thing was, I said I was not dating any more musicians. And then now, yeah, I'm gonna marry one. We were friends for a very long time, first of all, and then we were working on music together before we got together. So we already had this. We were already like best friends who loved the same stuff, and he helped me. He helped produce my vocals on my last album, so we already knew we worked great together. And we had been talking about doing this acoustic stuff before the pandemic, before we got together. Like, hey, we should do some acoustic shows. He's from Texas as well. He's from San Antonio.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, it's funny. Like we met each other out here. So at first I was like, I can't. It's difficult to be with a musician. It is, and especially when you're gone. The touring thing, you have to be able to immensely trust that person, um, and understand that if you're in the studio all day, I've been in relationships with non-musicians and they just don't, they see your itinerary, and if they call you, they're like, well, shouldn't you be doing this? And it's like, it doesn't work that way. Nothing goes according to plan. And we've both had that in previous relationships where it's like, well, why aren't you here? It's like, no, we're not being, this, it's just the way things go. They don't go according to plan, or you're in the studio until like 9 o'clock and then you miss the planned dinner, and then the other person is upset. It's so nice to not have to explain anything, and not feel so bad about being gone. Like, I'm gone a lot, he's gone a lot, and we're like, good, you go out, you go do your shows. Like, we're happy when the other gets a show. It's like, great, go. It's more of who's gonna watch the animals type
Yeah.
thing. But
Okay.
I would just say I can't imagine, having that, the normalcy of the 9 to 5 job, and then the rehearsals, and then the shows. You just have to know what you're getting into, and just be supportive of it. I guess it's
True.
not easy to be with
Yeah.
them.
It's not. I unfortunately have been divorced more than once, and I clearly remembered one time that the person told me, "Why do you like going to concerts? It seems like the most stupid thing. People are singing so loud that they don't even get to hear the song the same way." And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this for the rest of my life. Obviously, I didn't. But I want to move on from that to the successes that you're having as a couple. You are about to put out an acoustic album together. Why don't you talk to us about that? And I want to throw in this question. What are the chances of us seeing you both? Since you both probably fly sometimes together to Texas to visit family, what are the chances that you're going to throw some impromptu shows either in San Antonio or the Dallas area as an acoustic duo?
We've done some in San Antonio, actually.
So what happened to Dallas?
I know, we're trying. We're trying. Like, I actually, we're both going to Austin to see his mom next month, and then I'm flying by myself to go to Dallas to see my family, and he's going to go play a show. I've been just like hitting up little random wineries and bars in my little hometown. Like, do you have any live music open? Like, just for me to just come play, because my family.
I'm going to ask this right away, Nikki. I know that this podcast is not seen by many people yet. I'm working hard for it to get an audience, but I know that some of the people that watch it are people that are active with venues and in tribute bands. Where could they reach out to you directly if they wanted to invite you or try to begin getting the ball rolling for you and your fiance to play an acoustic duo show in the Dallas area?
Hit me up on any of my social medias. We actually have a page on our Heaven Below site, but it's for our booking stuff, like for our info and everything. But it's like I'd have to get the link. But yeah, you can reach me on any of my social media stuff, and I usually always.
You still manage that, your social media profiles with 500,000 followers on the different platforms? Are you still in one in charge?
Yeah, and yeah. It's I do stuff for the Maidens, Heaven Below, for my stuff. Like, I like being hands-on and knowing everything that's going on.
Talk to us now about the Patreon page, because I was listening to some of your demos there. Please let us know about this, because this might not be a viable option for other artists to get their own Patreon page, but why don't you talk us through what it has meant for you through the pandemic and as a way to stay connected with fans, with that select group that decides to support you monthly through a Patreon membership?
Yeah, I was so iffy about doing a Patreon thing at first. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. And then I had this guy Dusty, who I'm sure you'll meet through the group. He kept asking me, why don't you do a Patreon? Just do a Patreon. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm stuck at home. I guess it can give a chance to bring people closer together and actually give more of an insight into my album for the people that really care, because I don't want to be putting demos out there for just out there all for the whole world to see. But
to have 1 million followers and then have 2 likes.
Yeah. So It's turned into such a cool little thing. It's a small group, and I've been showing the behind the scenes stuff. They've got to see the demos or listen to the demos from the beginning. I did some behind the scenes for the photo shoot for the upcoming album. Um, we're about to get to album art, about to start vocals next week. And so I'm going to let them kind of vote on the album art and everything. And the coolest thing is, because since I do all of this stuff and I run all of my things, this has allowed me to actually get to know people. I get to spend time with these people, and I go and I make sure I get to see them after shows or even hang out with them at shows. And on this last run on the East Coast, I think I probably saw like 8 or 9 people, and I,
So when I read, it was literally you having coffee or something with the Patreons after or before a show, because I thought I read that, but I wasn't sure you were actually physically sitting with them.
yeah, there's an awesome group, call them the Three Amigos. One of them lives in Dallas, Rocco. One of them is in Maryland. Dusty
Okay.
and Jim is in Wisconsin. And they've actually, this is the coolest part, is people have actually formed these friendships, and they flew out to the Texas shows and stayed with Rocco, and they came out to some of the shows, and then they did that on the East Coast as well for the Maryland shows. So they've actually become such like good friends, and they go and they stay with each other. And I went out and I had dinner with them like in Maryland, like across the street from the venue, because they hung with my parents and everything at one of the shows in Waco, like. So it's really, it's like actually created like a little family,
Hmm.
it's really, because I don't have, as you could see with my sporadic emails, I try my best to do everything, but it's hard for me to be hands on all the time, and with Patreon it's really allowed me to do that.
And now I this is going live, but why don't you issue an invitation for those that may be catching us live for what's going to happen in the next hour or so? Because when you and I try to schedule this, you talk about the fact that you have an important activity going on today. I'd love for you to share about that and make an invitation for people to join, because I decided to join. You didn't even ask me, you didn't even mention it. I just like, okay, she said she had a Patreon, I'll check it out. But please take this moment to announce that Patreon.
Yeah, so if you want to join the group, you can, I believe it's just Patreon/Nikki Stringfield, and I do live streams where I talk about, the tour, my album. I'll play through, if I'm practicing Maiden songs, like I hop on and I'll play, like, I'll go through the Maiden songs, and I'll take, I'm like, what song you want to hear? Okay, well, let me dust it up, and you'll see me mess up. You'll see me relearning songs.
Listen,
uh,
I'm very excited. So if I get to ask you, will you play Transylvania? Is that a chance? Because that's a song that neither Maiden nor the Tributes ever play. And that's, I don't mean to offend any fan or brand of
yeah,
Bruce Dickinson, but that's my favorite Iron Maiden song, and it's an instrumental.
yeah, we actually, did we play it on the last tour? I know we ran it to play, but so I probably did play it on the live stream actually. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I know what I'm going to ask for in the live stream. And that's coming up in a couple of hours as well, right?
Yep, we're gonna be going. It's almost noon my time, so it'll be at 2 my time, 4 Central, 5 Eastern. Yep.
Okay, so for those in the Dallas area watching live, you still got a couple of hours to sign up for Nikki's Patreon.
Yep.
Nikki, talk to us about the name escapes me, the covers album, because I've been listening to it nonstop. Talk to me about how that happened. It was released by your band. It's not a solo project. Talk to me about that album, especially about the song selection.
The Heaven Below, Rest in
Yeah,
Pieces. Yeah.
Rust in Pieces. Yes.
So some of that was already done before I joined in the band. Like I joined
Okay.
in at the end, and I played guitar on some of the songs. I sang on some of the songs. So a lot of that song selection was actually just Patrick. So
Your fiance, correct?
yeah, so a
Okay.
lot of that was already going. A lot of it was done, and I jumped in at the end and on
So
what's
which
on.
songs do you play on? Because there were a couple of songs that I heard. This doesn't necessarily sound the same, and there. So which of the songs that you recall that you played on?
I sang on Down in a Hole. I
Hmm.
sang on Crawling, the Linkin Park song. I played and sang on Desert Plains. So I did a lot of the little guitar things in that. And I played and sang on Don't Change.
Okay, the
Uh,
last two songs, Desert Plains and Don't Change.
I think
Let
it,
me ask you about Danging. I'm guessing then that Patrick is a huge Alice in Chains fan.
yeah. Oh
Because
yeah.
what I noticed, what really was haunting, the song begins with a radio recording of the announcement of Mr. Stally's passing, and uh, and it was just very shocking. Nikki was probably 5, 7 years old when this happened. I don't think that she ever heard that on the radio. I don't think it's a personal story of hers. So
Yeah.
that was Patrick's.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a
Okay.
huge Alice in Chains fan, which actually I am too. I grew up listening to Alice in Chains. I think I was always singing Rooster when I was little. I had no idea what I was singing about, but that was one of my favorite songs when I was little.
Oh wow. Wow. Let's I could keep asking questions. Let's ask this one final question. I told you that I have two daughters living with me. I have an older daughter who lives in Guatemala. She is in her mid 20s and married. But my two young daughters, I always tell them, don't let anybody get to you by telling you you're pretty or smart. And here's why. Being pretty is first an opinion, but it's mostly something that they have nothing to do with it. It's basically an evaluation of their physical attractiveness. And being smart is something that I myself struggle with because I was told I was smart so many times that I said, oh, and then I would get and pass tests very easily without the hard work. I became lazy. I'm a full-time teacher now, and I've learned that people that are told they're smart too many times, they perform because they can make up at the last minute.
Yeah.
As a lady who has a professional career playing music, what do you think about the fact that there's more commentary and more attention brought up to your image than to other people? People will probably want to say that you're pretty, that you're an attractive guitar player, that you're a female guitar player.
Mm,
Does that make you think about issues that we still have to work with? Because I personally tell my daughters, pretty and smart don't mean a thing. What
yeah.
matters is that you're kind to others and that if you're smart, you work hard. I've seen that in talking to you. You seem to have gotten nothing like a lucky story, but there's a lot of hard work behind the scenes from you practicing on your guitar for so long.
Yeah.
And we never got to touch more on the Schecter endorsement and how that happened, but putting out YouTube videos so that by the time you arrive at the NAM show in California through an internship from college, you already had been known by the Schecter people from your YouTube videos, and then rehearsing and rehearsing, probably with very little sleep when you were given the opportunity to play one show,
Yeah.
and your professional ethic lead to the success. What do you make about the fact that a lot of people will say, okay, but she's pretty and maybe smart, whereas really it has way more to do than that?
Yeah, it is a you will definitely get people that say, "Oh, well, these girls, get to where they are because of their looks." Trust me, I was the geek, the nerd, I had the glasses, I had the braces, I was chubby, I was everything. So I just when people just say it's about the looks, it's a bummer, when people just comment, "It was pretty. Did you even listen to my playing?" And I guess it's also there's a downside to it as well. Like I on my last album cover, I was I wore a corset, but nothing was showing. It was just I just liked the look of it. It's an album cover, so I had my friend do my hair and my makeup, and I don't go around looking like that half the time. My you probably wouldn't even recognize. I look like a hobo half the time at home. Like, if I'm not doing anything, like I'm just chill. I'm a tomboy. But somebody said that I lost them as a fan and they're not following me anymore because I chose to wear a corset. I chose to wear a corset on my album, and that sends a wrong message to his daughter that
Oh
she
no.
shouldn't have to look that way. I'm like, am I supposed to wear a potato sack? Like, am I? So I can't make my dress the way to make myself feel like I look good.
Yeah,
Like, so it's
yeah.
it's a very sad thing, and I guess in the industry you're expected to look a certain way, and sadly
It's part of
that's
the work, right? It's with the Iron Maiden, you play a role musically, but you obviously have to play a role visually because
yeah
people want to see people that look like rock star, and it's happened to males as well. It happens to males
yeah
where they have to put a lot into their hair and makeup, and
uh-huh
and the leather pants and all of that. Well, Nikki, I honestly would love to continue asking many questions, but I have to let you incredibly gracious with me because of technical delays. We were scheduled to start about 2 hours ago, and we're still here. Thank you so much. Here's what I hope that the next time that you fly into Dallas, you have a lot of messages into your social media profiles with invitations and proposals to book you. as a solo artist, hopefully with your fiance for the acoustic duo shows, and I'll definitely be there because I'm going to continue being a Patreon member. I hope people join Patreon in time enough to watch your live Patreon in a couple of hours, and they get to continue supporting what you do because what you do is amazing. Yes, you're an incredible role model. I have learned so much from work ethic, from doing what you love, committed to it, never giving up. I've also learned a lot as a father because you're have this confidence that has allowed you to succeed, and you are an incredibly kind person, and I'm so thankful for your time. Nikki, thank you so very much. And like I always say at the end of the shows, if you see me around at a show, please don't say hello, say hola, because that's hello in Spanish.
Yes.
Nikki, have a good one. Thank you so much, and I'll see you at the Patreon and at a future show.
Gracias.
Adios.
Adios.
If you see at the top, there is a count. Oops, I think I started.